So first of all, I would like to take this chance to thank Faith in Europe for inviting me to share some of the key perspectives regarding, for my case, I will speak mostly about climate justice. So before going into more about sharing our concerns and our perspectives, I would like to share a bit of my story and how I began my journey as a climate activist. So I'm a Gen Z. So I was born in 2001. I was born in Italy, and I'm Afro-Italian. So I grew up with both my Italian culture and my Ghanaian culture because my parents moved to Italy about 30 years ago. And then they decided to come here and to also build a family here. So then my journey as an activist began in 2020. But I would say that I began to become interested in issues around justice also with the movement of Fridays for Future, even though I never had the chance to be part of any local movement in my city at that time. But I felt that it was inspiring to see other young people like me protesting and going around the city and fighting for their future. So the moment where I start an active involvement in activism began with the Climate Justice for All campaign with the Methodist Church, where I had the chance to work alongside with a global team, with young people from different parts of the world, where we really decided to come together, create this global campaign, and as well as sharing this campaign at COP26, which is the Conference of Parties of the United Nations in Glasgow. So through this experience, I had the chance to dig more into the interrelation between climate change and social justice, so-called climate justice. So especially thanks to this experience, I learned from my colleagues. It was really enriching and really empowering as well. Also having and acknowledging the importance of having a shared voice on these matters, and as well as coming together and sharing, let's say, the same table and ensuring that everyone experience as being valued, as well as listening to those who firsthand experience climate impacts and who are in the front line of this emergency. So through this campaign, we also created short films and worship resources that are still available and translated in different languages, also thanks to the global network of volunteers, ensuring that each voice can be represented and that each story can also be listened by everybody and also around the world. So then in 2022, straight after Glasgow, we had also the chance to meet other young people, also from different and other Christian denominations. So we decided to create Climate Yes, which stands for Youth Ecumenical Summit, which is an ecumenical movement of young people from around the world, which they all have different backgrounds, and we have Lutherans, we have Orthodox, Methodists, Valdesians, so very, very wide group with really young Christian activists advocating for climate justice and also fighting for their future. So during this time, I was also appointed as the European Methodist Youth Climate Ambassador by the European Methodist Council, where my role was really to engage with young people from around Europe, from the different Methodist churches, and really ensuring that our voices were also represented when it comes to climate justice. And here I am today at these events, sharing also some of the things that I had the chance to learn during the years. So when it comes to climate justice, when it comes to climate change, is not very easy, especially if you don't have the resources, the capacity, and the knowledge to fully understand certain things, such as the policy making process that usually happens, for example, during at COPs or during the mid conferences before COPs happen. So when it comes to really also getting informations about how this process works and about all the researches that have been doing also in these latest years, it can also be overwhelming to read to years and years of researches and years of statements where there wasn't any step forward in achieving any goals, tangible goals. So one of the things that also I felt sometimes hopeless was really also listening to my colleagues coming from the Global South, listening about the loss and damage and about the climate finance that still today hasn't been delivered. And when it comes to these, especially these two things, is not just about funding somebody and get, for example, an interest back or profit from founding a project, but it's really about reparations. It's really about acknowledging the accountability and the responsibility that you have regarding the impact that those communities had during, and especially during these catastrophes. So I titled this slide about with the title, "What about us? What about us as young people?" And during the camp that I had recently through Climate ES, we hosted this two days camp where we invited young people from around Italy to really share their concerns in their perspectives of how they felt during this time and what we can really do. So most people said that they feel that there is a lot of uncertainty about their future. And especially for me, sometimes I wonder where in 20 years time, 30 years time, where I will be, especially when it comes to our feelings. In fact, I remember having a conversation regarding eco-anxiety, having these feeling stressed, feeling frustrated as well, and feeling also anxious about our future. And one of the things that also really made me also reflect was the feeling of not being considered when it comes to climate conversations and when it comes to also representing and having a voice at the table or even listen to, because when it comes to climate, sometimes there's still this idea of that, oh, okay, this is just a young people initiative, you know, they are just making a lot of noise. Okay, this is just of young people. But as a matter of fact, this is not just about young people. This is about everybody. Each one of us has a role to play. So I think that it's really important to have a space at the table where we can really share our perspectives, and also having a dialogue where each one of us can listen and can be listened to when it comes to having plans, action plans, when it comes to also having innovative ideas and giving hope also to young communities. So one of the things that the three words that I wrote here were hope, future, and empowerment. Also feeling that not feeling powerless anymore, because this is also one of the feelings that we experience, feeling powerless, feeling that whatever we are doing is not enough. And as well as speaking about climate migration. This is something that came up during one of the last days of this camp, which also made me reflect, because as we maybe some of us know, during also these catastrophes, but also in the future, we'll have more climate migrants. And coming from a place like Italy, where immigration has been one of the key things also in politics and in the society, still today, there is no a definition of climate migrants, and there is no legal protection for a climate migrant or a climate refugee. Which is quite disappointing, as well as knowing how many people have been forced to change their country, and how many people have been displaced forcibly by catastrophes, which happen to be from climate crisis, and as well as earthquakes, and so on. So what can we do in taking action, really, and what are the approaches that we feel that may work also for to also engage more and also actively listen and really do something concrete and tangible also in our community? First of all, to educate ourselves, which is something that can also create our awareness, but can also help other people to be more aware about the problem, which can be also capacity building activities, coming together as a youth group or with your church, really to share and also learning together, because sometimes it can be a bit difficult with some resources, some technique, language, but really coming together and having people also teaching you things about climate change, climate justice, and also about policy can be very, very important. Responsible consumption, as well as recycling to protect the environment as much as possible, as well as intergenerational dialogue, which is also linked to what I was saying before. It is very important to not forget the importance of sharing, not just among, let's say, our group, but also with our community itself, and also with other people from different ages, which is very important and also very enriching when it comes to having really a conversation and exchanging experiences and also wisdom and knowledge when it comes to these things. And then as well as our faith, I truly believe that as people of faith, we can't really forget that our faith play a role, have a key role in our life. And I really think that we as people of faith, we can really collect hope that can really enable God's creation to thrive once again. And I really think that as God's spiritual family, it is our responsibility to help one another in every way possible. And to conclude, God's family works best when its members works together. So I really believe that even though we as young people, we feel powerless, or we feel that we may even feel lonely sometimes, I think that if we come together, but if the whole church come together, so not only young people, if we all come together, we can really enrich ourselves, but as well as promoting a concert action, both in our church, but also outside. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irene. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're not going to be taking questions immediately. For those that have just joined us, we have 3 more speakers, and then we're going to have a breakout session in smaller groups, followed by a sort of an end plenary where we'll have sort of big group discussion. So thank you so much, Irene. I think we've said that Emilio, you'll be going next. Could you introduce yourself just as you start? That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, everybody, also for the invitation. And good afternoon from Brussels, where I am now. I'm actually Italian. I come from a region which is in the northwest of Italy, Piemonte, close to Turin. So yeah, I see Irene that is smiling, very nice. And yeah, I've been working here at COMECE, the Commission of the Bishops' Conferences of the European Union, for almost 3 years now. And my main areas of work, as Rebecca also mentioned, are culture, education, and youth. So today, together also with my colleague Khatia, we're going to just explain a bit what we do, and Khatia will delve more into her personal experience. But first of all, what is COMECE? So the Commission of the Bishops' Conferences of the EU, which is this very long word, is a representation of the Catholic Church, of the Bishops' Conferences here in Brussels, for dialogue with the European institutions. This is our mission. It's a mission that started in 1980, so a few years after the European Community actually was forming. And we have a bishop that is delegated from each bishops' conference in every member state of the European Union, and a secretariat that works here in Brussels on different areas of policy making. So we really follow the politics and the policy making legislative processes in the European institutions. And we try to put forward the perspective of the Catholic Church, really exchanging with different actors, with the European Commission, the Council of the EU, and the Parliament, mainly the European Parliament. The Secretariat deals with other areas as well: migration, interreligious dialogue. We have social affairs, economic affairs. We have ethics, which is also becoming higher on the agenda. We have external relations, the whole question of peace with the war against Ukraine, and so on and so forth. So we really try to deal with anything that is political, and that and where we as Catholic Church, through Catholic social teaching, can say something about. So all the issues that concern politics and society that affect faithful as well at the local level in the bishops' conferences. And we do so with very practical means. Of course, we have, at least in the area of youth, which is what I'm going to talk about in a few seconds, we have many initiatives. We have a platform with Catholic faith-based youth organizations, which is called the COMECE Youth Platform. We have a COMECE Youth Net that Khatia will also delve a bit more later into. And through these networks of young people, we try also to understand what is the feeling and the perspective of young people, young Catholics in the EU, so that we can also act better in our work here in Brussels. We rely, of course, from the input at the local level, because without that input, we cannot really put forward any vision, any proposal for the dialogue with the European institutions. There was yesterday, Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, she gave her speech on the state of the Union, the state of the European Union, where she usually says what are the next steps for the next legislative year, in terms of everything the European Union is doing. And she also mentioned young people, especially those young people that are going to vote next year for the first time for the European elections. But coming back to the concerns of young people, which is something that we want to address today, through a series of initiatives, we had a convention, an online convention in 2021 on the future of Europe, together with a conference on the future of Europe, which was this very big process started by the EU institutions. We had also, since Irene was also mentioning that, online interfaith convention on the European Green Deal, so on ecology and sustainability. And we also have now these initiatives of the meetings of the COMECE Youth Net. So through this, we can get an idea of what young people are thinking about and what the concerns are. And I will mention some input, and then of course we can go more in detail in the rest of today's session. But definitely the centrality of human dignity is something that young people want to see more respected and reflected in how the European Union acts, especially for what concerns the values, the Christian values that we see in our society, and we want to see more in our society. So solidarity and fraternity are very important for the future of the EU, be it with supporting education, but also lifelong learning, and intergenerational dialogue, as it was mentioned before, is a real part of that. We have to make sure to communicate better between generations and across generations, so that we are all proceeding and moving together in the same direction. The rural-urban divide is something that strikes young people a lot as well. Many of the young people that we had in the past events at COMECE, they really stress how a lot of them have to move to the cities because of opportunities, but at the same time, they would like to be still linked and find employment, find opportunities where they are, where they come from. So tackling this divide between rural and urban areas is very important. And then, of course, comes ecology, to develop more infrastructures, to live more sustainably, and also address the inequalities that climate change has inevitably created over the years. And also to protect consumers, to have a certain care for consumers in what they eat, in what they do, and in how they use what is given to them. And then comes the big topic of democracy and values. And there, especially with the contribution we're going to publish very soon this week, that young people wrote. Young people really want to be more involved. They want to see that there are equal opportunities for them, especially for those that usually are not involved. So people that are young people that are neat, not in education or employment or training. And also there is a need, a necessity that is felt by young people to have more value teaching and value-based teaching at school and in the education systems, so that really young people can learn from their early life on what it means to be compassionate, what it means to be in solidarity with others. And this can happen through literacy, like democratic, civic literacy, or democratic literacy, religious literacy, also to understand the differences between one's religions and faiths. And a big part of that is also concerning critical thinking. Young people are mentioning the fact that, especially with the very fast digitalization, one has to develop some critical thinking in order to understand what is true and what is not. So to tackle this information that we always talk about very much in our societies. And the last one, I would say, to conclude, because then I want to give the floor to Khatia. The last one might be also the topic of the family. So family-oriented policies that allow really, on one hand, to tackle the demographic winter that we are experiencing, and it's the biggest challenge that we're experiencing in Europe today, but also that allows young people to have a family, to have also good opportunities, and to ensure a future for their children, not only with material well-being, but with all the welfare that is needed for that. So I leave it there. So these are a bit the concerns that I felt like bringing up, and then we can complement.
Thank you very much. That was really interesting. Thank you. I think, Khatia, you're going to build on what Amelia said. Thank you.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. So, good afternoon, everyone. really a good honor to be here with you today. So I want to start by saying thank you for this opportunity you gave me today, and also want to highlight the fact that the topic we are discussing now is really important not only for young people, but also for entire Christian world, because young people is our future usually depends on young people. So, yeah. So now let me very briefly introduce myself. So my name is Khatia. It's really Georgian name, and I know that it's sometimes really difficult to pronounce. I'm from Georgia. So I did my bachelor degree in Georgia, and then I did my master's degree in Germany. And also during my master's study, I had the honor to be being a katholische akademische Ausländerin scholarship holder. And after completing my master's degree, I did a 9-month internship at the Commission of Bishop Conference of the European Union as called convened. So I was intern on education culture and youth policy. Basically, Emilia was my supervisor. And also I had the opportunity to work on other policy areas. And because of this, honestly, I think I'm really lucky that I get the really huge, like a whole idea of the work of convened. So now that you already have a bit of an idea of who I am, so let me move on the topic of this webinar. So concern of young Christians in Europe. So I will speak mainly from my personal experience. So over the last few years, I had the opportunity to interact with the young Christian at the various events and meetings. So we often discuss what was the main concern for us as a young Christian, and the answer often was different. It's not surprising because we were mainly an international network, so different background, different culture, and different problems as well. So, but we all agree on the problem of education. This is complex topic itself, and a lot of time. So it's not only lack of education, but also in some cases lack of opportunity to get education. It's also possible that you have received an education, but your professional skills are not enough to move to next level, and get a job. This applies also not only to general or professional education, but also Christian and cultural education and the knowledge. So I also often heard the issue of education system, since religious education is not compulsory in schools, high schools, primary schools, and I mean the public schools. Maybe it does not apply to all countries in the EU or outside of it. It's still nowadays it's a big deal for Christian society and Christian youth. So I also want to now I will focus on the experience during the internship in convened. So during this 9 months, I had to meet a lot of young Christians, and that showed me the existing problems from another angle. So as Emilia already mentioned, the committees net, where I also worked a lot. And what is the committees net? This is the committee consultative body, which is composed of young Christians for EU member states, delegated by their local bishop conference. It was created last fall in 2022. Those young people who are actively involved in Christian lives and also motivated and interested in the EU youth policy. The youth met twice a year to discuss various problems, issues, and plans and fund and implement various activities. One of the Emilia already mentioned, and I want to mention another activity, which was during the World Youth Day. We had really great panel discussion, which is already available online. So if you are interested, you already can see it. Based on my experience, I can say quite really that one of the main concern in the is the fact that youth voice very often are not heard, especially at the U level. It doesn't matter if it is related to the politics, economic, culture, social issues. This is why I believe that what Comesta is doing by creating the YouthNet is very important, because young people have a platform where they can express their opinions, thoughts, and views, and they also know that their voice will be heard. I want to raise another concern related to the internet and technology. Of course, in today's world, it's very important to have access to the internet, which automatically means a source of unlimited information, although this information can often contain dangers. What I mean by this is access to any information for users of any age. Also, the problem of online pornography, which leads to the problem of young Christian families. Also, addiction to the internet and then technology often leads to mental health problem, and then problem of loneliness. Also, hate speech, harmful language, and bullying on social media is so cruel sometimes that often leads to suicide among the young people, and not only the young. So, and this list is growing and growing every day. That's why I think that we all must work together to raise awareness of those topics and try to find solutions. So digital transformation is inevitable, of course, but we must also focus on all the dangers accompany those processes and try to raise awareness about all the danger and try to find solutions together. So I think I will finish with that, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Khatia. Thank you. And now our final speaker is Patrick Ramsey. Patrick, are you with us?
I'm here, yes. Thanks for inviting me to speak today. As Rebecca said at some point earlier, I'm the Vice Chair of the World Student Christian Federation in Europe, and I've been in that role for about 2 years now. I've also been asked to pass on apologies from our secretary, who'd hoped to be here to support the event, but had to attend a training workshop which clashed with it. So she'd have liked to be here, but unfortunately it was not to be. I'm going to start by just talking a bit about the perspective that I'm coming from when I
Patrick, you've frozen for a moment. I think we'll give you a moment. Hopefully he can rejoin. So I think I'll give him maybe another minute or two. If he's not able to join immediately, we might go into breakout rooms early and then come back and hear him afterwards. Okay. I think we shall do that. So what we'll do is we'll go into breakout rooms for 20 minutes. And the idea is just to have some smaller group discussions, and then we'll come back and we'll hopefully hear from Patrick, and then we'll have a plenary discussion. So Abby and Ramina,
I'm sorry that basically my copy of Zoom crashed and I didn't notice very quickly because it was hidden behind a PowerPoint presentation. So yes, that's why I dropped out. I'll try and share my screen again, but if it crashes again, then I will give the presentation just through speech. Oh wait, I can't share the screen anymore because I'm no longer a co-host. Never mind.
Doesn't matter.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. And I should add that I'm probably going to end up repeating a lot of the themes that have already been shared because these themes are quite universal. So perhaps the first sort of perspective on what young people are worried about or are thinking about today would be the thematic areas that WSCF works in. So we've got climate and how you make a just transition to an economy which isn't damaging to the climate. You've got the just treatment of women, of gay people, and just generally everyone. So that kind of comes like under gender and sexuality, you might look at sort of the place of gay people in churches, the place of women in churches, which is contested in some churches, certainly. And then advocacy and solidarity, just standing by those who don't have a good place in society. But also, we're interested in working with other groups on this and just getting to understand people of different faiths, people from different Christian backgrounds, and so on. So then this comes from 2021, which was our last European Regional Assembly. These were the priorities that people shared, and they're both the ones that I talked about a moment ago: climate change, the treatment of refugees, war. But then you also have things like conspiracy theories and just the kind of rise of authoritarianism, essentially, which kind of take away the tools that people have to change things, or just distract from the things that need changing. And these present a pretty significant problem for those who are worried about this change, the change that we need actually taking place. So what was suggested that Christians, potentially WSCF, could be doing were sort of bringing a more compassionate perspective, I suppose, to these conversations. How can you ensure that discussions about tricky issues are kind of held with the dignity of each and every person as kind of the foremost perspective? How do you ensure that people don't kind of rely on hate? But then also, perhaps, do you see says there the voice of youth in policy making? For young people, it can often be the case that we're worried that the things which we think matter aren't taken as seriously as we want them to be. And that can often make life feel quite difficult for young people and amplify their worries that these things aren't going to change. So then again, we've got, these are priorities which came up in more recent discussions over the last 2 months. Eco-justice, once again, the rights of people of different genders, of different sexualities, but also mental health, which I hadn't mentioned up until now particularly. The word overloading was actually one that was used on the site of the Danish YMCA, who are one of our member movements. And basically the idea being that people are some young people can be quite scared of what's happening to the climate, or perhaps even about their job prospects or that kind of thing. Sometimes this can lead to guilt. It can lead to kind of a fear that we can't keep living to the standard that we have been doing, and that can be quite scary. And also, it's just the fact that that young people seem to, in general, feel very busy at the moment and think that they don't have the spare time that we assume that people used to, and that makes things which would once have been seen as exciting opportunities, like, say, attending conferences abroad, feel almost like they seem less attractive. The idea of being expected to do them can almost seem like a burden. So, and a lot of these themes came up at the assembly of the Conference of European Churches, which I was at 2 months ago now, maybe, where a number of the young delegates collected together to make a statement asking the Conference of European Churches, but also its members individually, to put climate change at the forefront of a lot of the decisions they make, to for example, appoint a climate advisor to their governing boards. But then also in those statements, there was concern mentioned for human rights, gender equality, and also a need for spaces where people who disagree will still treat each other with respect. That church needs to be capable of offering that space if it's found to be lacking in some communities. So the final thing I think it's all very well to talk about what people's priorities are, but perhaps they're better illustrated by showing you some of the actions and campaigns that our member movements or we ourselves are actually running. So that's going to be what I'll do for the remaining few minutes of this presentation. So first of all, Honest Church is a campaign which is being run in the UK by the Student Christian Movement. The ethos behind this is that essentially when people go to a church and they get comfortable in that community, and then a few months down the line, they discover that the ethics of that community are vastly different from what they'd imagined they would be. That can be disillusioning. It can drive people away from church. It can harm people's spiritual life. So therefore, we're not campaigning for they're not campaigning for a specific point of view on, say, the place of gay people in the church, although SCM is an inclusive organisation and would presumably rather all churches were welcoming to gay people. But the idea is, if you're a church that doesn't want gay people being involved on any committees or actually serving the church in any way, if you're a church that believes women shouldn't be preachers, then the campaign is asking you to be more open about that, to state it more plainly so that people don't come to these churches and then walk away disillusioned, and instead they can find a church which corresponds more to that they can feel more comfortable in from the beginning and continue to flourish in. So that's one. I'd also say that I've seen various study sessions from our member movements in Italy and Austria on kind of the place of gay people in the church. So next, I'll talk a bit about environmental events. WSCF ran a workshop in May, the aim of which was to give young people the tools to carry out campaigns in their local community. Since then, I know that one of our attendees in the Netherlands is kind of doing work with local schools and churches to encourage greater recycling facilities. I've also seen, again, that the movement in Italy had a study session recently whose name translated to something along the lines of "We are not the centre of the world." And this was, yes, a study session on kind of environment, the church's impact on it, what we can do. And now I'm coming back to the Danish YMCA, who I said earlier were interested in mental health and mental well-being. Danish YMCA is a bit of an outlier in that it works, at least compared to some of the movements, in that it works with a much wider age range. But one of the things that they mentioned in particular was that they run choirs and other activities for young people with the aim of kind of helping them let go of their burdens just be in community. And that being in community is a good way of combating worries about the future, and that people feel more assured when they have community with each other. This one is a poster from the movement in Finland who run retreat days. There was certainly kind of a significant period of time for silence in the timetable there. So I suppose, again, you could think of that partly as mental health related, but also developing a relationship with God, so kind of spiritual meditation. We do have at least one movement who have been doing some interfaith dialogue. This event is from our Italian movement, who are, I think, primarily made up of the Protestant minority. And it seems to be a discussion at a Catholic university between students there, our Italian movement, but also a Jewish movement called, I think the name was FUCA, F-U-C-A. I could be misremembering. And we also have seemingly a focus on racism, or I'm not sure what the aim of this workshop was, because I only found out about it this morning. But it seems to be looking at questions of what does it mean for the church when it's complicit in something horrible? How do you kind of reckon with that? How do you reckon with that legacy in the aftermath? What responsibilities does that sort of thing confer upon the church going forward? And yes, here are just a few other things. We have a movement in Belarus, or we did for a while, who were opposing the dictatorship there. We've got contacts in Ukraine who we've been supporting to speak about the impact of the war there over the last year. We've got member movements tackling food poverty in their countries. And finally, just another way of looking at this mental health issue is, how do young people get listened to? They get listened to when they're confident and they're also competent. So WSCF is running a workshop in late October, I think, with the aim of boosting young people's capacity to, well, speak in public, to get their opinions heard, and hopefully to make the world better. I think that's about all I've got to share with you today, so I hope that was helpful.
That was extremely impressive. Thank you. Thank you to all of our speakers. I think we're going to have a period of discussion now. So I think maybe half an hour. If you've got questions, you can give questions to any of the speakers to respond to, or you might have specific people you'd like to ask questions to. If you can raise your hand through something called, there's a button down at the bottom of the screen called reactions. And if you press that and you press raise hand, what that does is just a bit easier to make sure we see you. But if you can't do that, then you can raise your hand on the video. So Dr. Christina Nellist, if you'd like to ask your question, you're just muted at the moment.
Thank you. Yes, to Patrick, you gave us some nice slides there on sort of a list of priorities, but what was the demographics of this? What numbers of people took part in it? Was it a poll? Was it a research study?
Nothing like that, I'm afraid. So the priorities that I was listing came from discussions at the last European Regional Assembly, which had, I think, about 15 participants from 11 of our movements, who were hopefully reflecting the moods, but from kind of a great number more students back in their home countries, but I don't know that. Or else they came from discussions with the leaders of a few of our member movements, who again hopefully have a view on what the wider mood is within their own movements. But we don't keep data on the number of members of each of our movements. I can only tell you how many members on how many member movements we have, which is 30 at the moment.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, Christopher.
I'm was interested to hear that there was mention of connection. Was it in Italy? Yes, one of the combinations of Christians and Jewish groups discussing. But something that I've asked about before, since this is called Faith in Europe, isn't it? Increasingly, it seems to me, it's important that we have conversations with Islam. And what are there any connections? You know, it'd be so interesting to have the perspective of young people who are Muslim. And there are more, after all, more and more Muslims now within the Northern Hemisphere. So I don't know who that's for.
I think we can probably take another question. I can say that that would also be a very good Faith in Europe briefing. So we can certainly look at doing that. That would be interesting.
There was one a few years ago, but I'm sure it needs a great deal of updating.
Amelia?
Yeah, maybe just briefly. I mean, I don't have a comprehensive answer to the question, of course, but I can say that when we organized this interfaith convention on the Green Deal, on the European Green Deals, on sustainability and ecology and so on, we did it in an interfaith, interreligious way. So we had organizations from young people, youth organizations from the Catholics, but also the Buddhists. We had Protestants also. We had Muslims as well. And there, I think it was also very interesting to enter in dialogue on the aspect of creation, which is something that is like care. What does care for creation mean? Since it's something that we are, like, these religions are sharing, or just they have similar or maybe very aligning thoughts on that. So I think in order to get started with dialogue with Islam in a way, it's useful to take issues that are concerning all the religions, including Islam, and then address them in a very open and a very constructive way, because then we drafted some priorities that we wanted to suggest to one of the commissioners, European Commissioner for the Environment. And that was a learning practice for for me, for instance, I'm a Catholic, and then I don't know like the vision on creation of Islam, and for the others as well. I can assure you that at the end, when we had the last meeting and we shared a bit among the organizers on what had happened and how we felt things had gone, everybody said it had been such a rich, like an enriching experience that really stimulated the fact that we didn't know, and then after that we did, and that we could actually agree on very practical proposals and recommendations to the European institutions.
I have a question for Khatia. You were talking about technology and the sort of lack of control, the sort of unlimited information and the danger of some of the content. And I wondered if there was sort of avenues for young people to actually have any kind of say or voice on this. Was there any platforms or organizations that are listening to young people on this?
As far as I know, I don't have any information about that, but I know that one of the Christian organization, it's called FAFSA in Brussels. They are working on pornography topic, but it's child pornography more than general pornography issues. Yeah, but maybe Emilio has some more decent information about that. But yeah, but during the discussions, it's really obvious that many young people are really concerned about this topic because it includes their ability to work, their ability to live, their ability to have relationships, and yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, what Khatia has mentioned is organization, the Federation of Catholic Family Associations in Europe. They are working on family-related issues, also like us in Brussels, and focusing also on that. But I believe that digitalization really has to be something that is taken care of in a very interdisciplinary way. We cannot just like address it from one single aspects or dimension of politics and society. I think it's become so encompassing that we have to really tackle it with different angles and different approaches. And I think young people really have to so I think that more attention should be paid to how young people interact with this technology and with digitalization in a way, and that can be done only as Khatia also mentioned, with families, in collaboration with families, because that's where the young people spend also most time with, and also with the schools. So how is digitalization affecting the ways we learn? And the way that we get new knowledge, and the ways that we interact with each other, because we all witnessed that during the pandemic it was very difficult to for kids and to develop social skills, interpersonal skills, if they were into their own separate room and they were just chatting maybe online. So what is the place of digitalization in this sense?
Any other questions?
I'm just wondering whether the speakers we've had want to ask anything of each other. They each gave a very clear perspective. The two are based in Belgium, one in Italy, one in UK. I'm wondering, does the situation look very different, say in Italy, or I mean, for the question of refugees is much more developed in Italy than it is in this country, though it's hard to persuade people that that is the case. Do you think your own situation makes a difference? Irene, do you think that, being in Italy?
Certainly we definitely experience a different kind of, in this case, if we think about even migration, definitely we experience this in a different way, also because looking at the numbers and how even politics have been focused so on in the latest years on this topic, and how people also have changed also their mindset towards migrants and toward the immigration topic. Definitely, I feel like is definitely different. However, I'll be honest to say that I don't know much about the UK immigration system. However, I don't know much about the UK and the British context. However, definitely immigration in Italy over the years has been seen more as a threat, sometimes mostly by how media and how politicians view it, and how we were also, and when we were also talking in the breakout rooms, we were also speaking about the fact that when it comes to migration, I think it's also very important to analyze the roots of migration, and also trying to tackle the roots of migration and try to solve and find also plans, projects, and when it comes also to the bureaucracy, finding maybe ways in which we as Europeans can also take accountability of our actions, past actions as well, and try really to think and maybe help and finding solution around the roots of the problem, also with the other governments as well.
Thank you. I guess I'd like to ask one question to all four is, are you optimistic about the future? I don't know who wants to go first.
Okay, Emilio, I see that you turn on the mic before.
It's fine. I don't know. I don't know. Yes. Well, not only because I'm an optimist for nature, like by nature, but I think so. Let's put it in this way. I think if I look at the current situation, objectively, there is a sort of improvement that we have witnessed throughout the years in certain areas in how we deal with societal issues and political issues as well. However, and for this, I'm optimistic because I feel that until the moment where there will be, and I'm talking from a faith perspective, that we will still keep on working to spread the gospel and to just witness Christ in our environments, in where we are, then this cannot but bring seeds of hope. So this is a bit my vision, in the sense that as long as we remain true to what we believe in and what we want for the future, I think there is it goes without say that we can be optimistic. but of course, the situations are different. And as you asked also before, it depends on your context. You can have an issue that another person in another country doesn't really see, and vice versa. But if we keep on at least being open and communicative about what happens in our life and what are the issues at stake and how we can do this together, and that's the whole idea behind Pope Francis' synod on synodality. How do we as church go forward together? What are the issues at stake? How do we deal with them? Then, yes, I can say I can be optimistic.
Well done.
Yes, as Emilio just said, I totally agree I totally agree with him on that. And I definitely believe that if we keep communicating and if we really keep continuing working together, but also sharing our experiences and our knowledge, definitely I can see that I can still be optimistic also because I'm also a positive person in general. So I try also to always see the good in whatever I'm doing, and I think that if we keep pushing and if we keep also raising awareness, it will be really, really good and really, really powerful and empowering as well.
Could I ask, Milo and Irene, were you at that pilgrimage in Portugal? Because listening to that on the radio, it gave me a lot of optimism for about young people and the future. It was on a Sunday morning, you know, just out something what's on, and to see so many, seeing that pilgrimage, I wondered if either of you been on it and whether that helped with optimism.
Yes, Khatia, if I can talk from my end. Khatia and I, we were there. We were at World Youth Day in Portugal, in Lisbon. And from my personal experience, I think it was the first time I attended one World Youth Day, which is this gathering of young Christians, you're normally Catholics, and going to see the Pope, because the Pope comes and for the almost the whole week. And young people from all over the world, they just fly to this city to see the Pope and to just share and take part in different activities, conference, moments of prayers. And for me, then it's really, yeah, it gives you optimism, of course. Yes, yeah, I came back and my fiance saw it. She's like, "You are different. Something has happened," because you really witness that the church is alive. Even though sometimes you don't see it in your reality, then you witness that you're not alone. That's a message. Maybe Khatia, you can complement that.
Yes, of course. So it was wonderful experience for me as well, because it was my first time to attend this kind of huge event, huge Christian Catholic event. So, and the feeling of unity, I think this is a place where we can find the hope of future, hope of the positivity and everything, because when you see the so many young people are together, and then my point, this is a faith, and then all the activities are around of your faith, it really gives you this kind of power that you can still change and you can do so many good things. Yeah, there's always be the problems and then challenges, but if we keep working together, I think we can put our small piece in our world.
Patrick, are you an optimist?
Sorry?
I was wondering if Patrick is an optimist.
Now there's a question. I would say I'm hopeful. I wouldn't necessarily say that the political situation gives immediate cause for optimism, but I believe that ultimately something will fall out of whatever's going on that resembles God's kingdom. And therefore, in the long run, there's cause for hope. But no, I believe that we'll muddle through, that people are generally resilient, but that doesn't necessarily mean. But then if I was asked whether I'm optimistic, I'd be thinking about, say, do I believe we'll avoid like catastrophic consequences of global warming? And I wouldn't bank on that. So
Good, thank you.
Keith Jenkins has had his hand up for a while.
Yeah. A lot of people of my generation, in Western Europe at least, are very devoted to democracy as a concept and a way of life, particularly political life. But I was therefore somewhat worried when I saw a newspaper headline, I think it was in this morning's Guardian, saying, which implied that young people were losing faith in democracy. And I'd be interested to know from our speakers whether they've noticed that kind of trend among young people, because I certainly have the image that the people who are turning against democracy in Europe tend to be of a rather older generation, nearer mine than yours.
Patrick?
in some sense, I'd maybe say it depends on context. I think the belief in democratic principles is still there. And yet, I do see some disillusionment in the people around me, or in kind of essentially the political leaders that democracy is producing. Which isn't to say that broadly speaking, I'd rather be living in the UK than the vast majority of dictatorships. And I'm sure most of the people I'm talking about would too. Well, when I say dictatorships, I mean existing dictatorships. But I think maybe there's some extent to which at least some of the people I hear from would question whether the system of kind of electing MPs and electing someone to lead the country is kind of the pinnacle of democracy, or whether the true spirit of democracy would be better achieved in some other way, such as more organisation at a more local level, which then informs organisation at kind of broader structures. But to some extent, that's more my opinion than necessarily something I know that lots of other people hold. It's hard. I can't say I've had many discussions directly about democracy, and indeed, yes, there's definitely, WSCF and its member movements would definitely be opposed to a lot of the sort of anti-democratic movements of the type you might see in Russia or Belarus, I gave an example of earlier. So it can be a difficult thing to get a clear point of view on sometimes.
Can I just say, knowing people in Belarus quite well. I was shocked by that title, because I thought surely anybody using that as, I mean, certainly at the moment would be arrested. It's other more subtle ways of without being you know, in each country has to adapt the way it's going to do the project or a study or something. And could you just explain what that was? Because it as I say, it shocked me when I read that, because I'm afraid for the whole population now, but even since the beginning of the 90s, it's been dangerous to speak out against the government. I mean, the dictator.
I'm afraid that, yes, to some extent that was my wording, but also the Centre Ecumenica, who were our affiliated movement in Belarus, took a strong enough anti-government line that most of them decided it was better if they no longer lived in Belarus.
Yes. I mean,
so yes, I think maybe they weren't as subtle as they might have been if they wanted to continue living safely there.
Yes. I mean, I met sort of underground, a small group of young people, but that was just after the millennium, and I was very moved by their Christian, they're coming together. It could have been a home group in this country, but it was very, they were just an amazing group of different professional people. And I often wonder how those individuals are now, but I don't think that the majority of them would have left the country. I just think they'd have taken other ways to minimize. I mean, some may be in prison, but others may have lived their lives in a more perhaps a fearful way, but not meeting in that sort of same group. But that's.
Could I come in here? In terms of the clash of values question, to ask Emilio and Irene and Khatia whether they have any views on the clash of values question in relation to Ukraine and Russia.
So could you please elaborate a bit further? So the clash of values in between the EU and Russia, or towards like concerning the war in Ukraine?
Well, a general question really, because a lot of the Russian Orthodox spin about Holy Russia, defending Christian values in their understanding. And a lot of the Western perspective appears to come from a values base that comes from the Enlightenment to more secular perspective.
Maybe if I can say something, it's not going to reply fully to the question or to give such a good overview, but I feel that if we want to have more dialogue, especially between different Christian denominations concerning such a hot topic like the war against Ukraine, we have to understand the situation on the ground first and what happened in the many years that the Orthodox Church lived in Russia, and what is the cultural context that comes with that. Because I can assure you that even within the EU and the EU bishops' conferences, you have a certain, you have, of course, an understanding of a church that is like unified and that is like, you know, unique and as it is together in one direction, but you have different cultural, linguistic, historical traditions that are not the same everywhere. They're very diverse, and so the priorities of the church in a country that is very much affected by migration and by the waves of refugees has a priority that might focus more on that than another bishops' conference or another parish that is just addressing other issues such as ecology because, I don't know, of floods and droughts and so on. So I think it looks like indeed there is a clash of values, a clash of perspectives that I think comes from, and this I'm also speaking in my personal capacity because I'm not an expert on the Ukraine issue, but it comes from a missing understanding that we have not taken care of in the past decades. How did we manage to arrive up to such a point? I mean, of course, then you have the states and you have society, you have people, but we have people-to-people contacts. What happened in the past decades that didn't allow us to have a constructive dialogue with the Russian people, or that maybe was just on the surface and didn't go deep enough to stimulate connections and reciprocal dialogue and exchange that was more fruitful and I'm not going as far to say they could have avoided the war, but at least could have helped not creating the conditions for such a conflict to happen. I think that there's really a lack of cultural understanding in that sense, and many more things. But to me, that's very important.
Irene and Khatia, did you want to add anything further to that?
I think Emilia really touched on the points that I was thinking. Really, I think really communication, misunderstanding, and also really, as I was also mentioning in my PowerPoint, really having a dialogue. I think could help also learning from our past experience, really. But I'm not an expert on these issues, so but I truly believe that communication, it could be really key in whatever we are really doing. Constructive communication, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. I cannot really add something more like new or special, but yeah, communication in any case, and try to understand each other's culture and background, where we're coming from. It's always helpful to avoid the conflict, and if we cannot avoid, we can somehow little bit help to sort it out. Yeah.
Is there anybody who would like to make any final very short remarks, because I think we're just coming to a close? Keith?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. You've been talking just now about the need for communication between people from different backgrounds, and of course that's right. One of the things that I find difficult in the present situation that the world has got itself into is the fact that because of the climate crisis, we are persistently being made to feel guilty about traveling. And I think, okay, you can do quite a lot of online these days without actually meeting somebody face to face, but that is really, really, really not the same as actually meeting and getting to know people properly through contact. And so on the one hand, you have this pressure to travel, and on the other hand, you have this pressure not to travel. And I just find this very difficult to get my head around.
Thanks, Keith. I certainly relate to that one. Well, thank you very, very much to all our speakers for giving us time and your thoughts. It's been really interesting and really varied. And Ashley, if you want to finish off.
Thank you very much. And I'm sorry I couldn't be with you at the very beginning for technical reasons with my own ineptitude, but it's great to see so many of you. One of the things that the Committee of Faith in Europe has prioritised in recent years is the aspiration to try and get more young people involved in what we do. So it's been really good listening to you this afternoon. And I think, like many of you, I was inspired by the scenes we saw from Lisbon, from World Youth Day. And there are lots of ways in which these are being publicised. And it's not just been for Catholics. The Anglican Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, he was there and he produced very enthusiastic tweets during his